Hi, everyone. It is Monday, June 16th. You are listening to the Mo News Podcast. I am Jill Wagner. This is the place where we bring you just the facts. We read all of the news and read between the lines so you don't have to. I hope everyone had a very nice weekend and a happy Father's Day. Thank you, everyone, for the birthday wishes this weekend. I appreciate all of them. So just me again today. Moshe still on vacation in Japan. You can follow along with all of his travels over on the Mo News Premium account. And just another really crazy weekend of news and no sign that it's going to be letting up. So let's get to some of the headlines here. A massive manhunt wrapped up late Sunday night. Sources say the man suspected of shooting two Minnesota lawmakers has finally been caught, what we know. Overseas, Israel stages daring daytime attacks on Iran, attacking the country's energy infrastructure and economic lifeblood. Iran firing missiles in a counterattack, with some getting through Israel's air defense system. Is it possible the United States could get directly involved in the military conflict? A sharp reversal, the Trump administration now pausing immigration raids on farms, hotels, and restaurants. The political calculus behind that move. More than 5 million people took part in No King's Day marches over the weekend to push back on a military parade in Washington, D.C. What Americans thought about that parade. And Pope Leo makes his first address to an American audience at Chicago's White Sox's stadium. Might we see the pontiff throwing out the first pitch at a Sox game sometime soon? And I'll have on this day in history. The man suspected of shooting two Minnesota lawmakers, killing one of them, has been taken into custody. Law enforcement tells the Associated Press that Vance Bolter was arrested Sunday evening. It followed a massive manhunt following the fatal shooting of Minnesota State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband, and then a separate shooting attack on another state lawmaker and his wife. That manhunt for 57-year-old Vance Bolter followed Saturday's twin attacks in Champlin and Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, and the discovery in the suspect's vehicle of an alleged target list of dozens of Minnesota Democrats, including Governor Tim Walz, U.S. Representative Ilhan Omar, Senator Tina Smith, and State Attorney General Keith Ellison, as well as doctors, community and business leaders, and Planned Parenthood locations. The FBI had been offering a $50,000 reward for information leading to Bolter's arrest, and they warned that he should be considered armed and dangerous. Bolter is suspected of gaining entry into the lawmakers' homes by disguising himself as a police officer, even arriving at the victims' homes in a vehicle that looked like a police cruiser equipped with flashing emergency lights. Minnesota State Senator John Hoffman and his wife, Yvette, were both shot multiple times at their home in Champlin, Minnesota at 2 a.m. Saturday night. They survived the attack. They're now in stable condition after undergoing surgery. Following the shooting at the Hoffman's residence, officers were then sent to Hortman's home to check on her well-being. As officers got to the scene, they encountered the gunman at around 3:35 a.m. The suspect and the officers exchanged gunfire before he escaped. He fled on foot and left behind his fake police car, where investigators found his target list and a stack of papers that said, quote, "No Kings." This is according to authorities. Police believe the suspect opened fire on the victims while wearing a latex mask to disguise his identity. Law enforcement have recovered several AK-style firearms from the suspect's vehicle. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz called the attack a, quote, "politically motivated assassination." Although the suspected shooter's motive has still not been released, authorities who were searching for Bolter had found a, quote, "vehicle of interest" in Sibley County near a listed address for him, and about an hour's drive from where Saturday's shooting occurred, along with, quote, "personal items believed to be associated with him." The suspect's wife was detained for questioning after a traffic stop, but she was released without being arrested. Investigators have been examining surveillance footage, bank records, Bolter's associations, and his movements from before the shootings. One of his friends, David Carlson, said he got a text message from Bolter early on Saturday morning in which Bolter wrote that he might be dead soon. On Friday, Bolter had given Carlson 4 months' worth of advanced rent payments, about $220 a month, for a small room in a shared house. Carlson said that he had never mentioned either of the lawmakers who were shot and generally avoided talking about politics. He said Bolter had been experiencing financial and mental health challenges. State Representative Hortman, who was killed at the attack, had just voted 5 days prior with Republicans to cut access to state health benefits for undocumented immigrants in the state. And she also helped pass legislation that expanded abortion rights, legalized recreational marijuana, and required employers to offer paid family and medical leave. Her husband, Mark, was also killed in the attack. The couple has 2 children. State Senator Hoffman started out in politics on his local school board. He now chairs the Senate's Human Services Committee. He is married with 1 daughter. His wife was also shot, but again, both are expected to survive. Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar said on Meet the Press Sunday that she was at a political dinner with Hortman the night before she was killed.
We started out together in politics, moms with young kids. And somehow she was able to balance getting to know every door knock, every house in her district while raising 2 children.
As to State Senator Hoffman and his wife, Klobuchar said this.
They are hanging in there. His wife was out of surgery first, and she's actually texted some of our mutual friends. And he may face some additional surgeries, but he is also in stable condition right now.
Bolter served multiple terms on Minnesota Governor's Workforce Development Board, where authorities say he may have met State Senator Hoffman, who was one of the victims. According to an online biography, he has an extensive background in security and military training, but NPR said that it was unable to confirm pretty much anything in the bio. These shootings in Minnesota have ratcheted up fears among members of Congress who are already uneasy about the country's increasingly volatile political atmosphere. Currently, only senior leaders in Congress have security. All right, let's head overseas, where we are now in the 4th day of war between Israel and Iran. As usual, I do want to preface this by saying that this is the situation as of the time I am recording this podcast, which in this case is Sunday evening Eastern time. So Sunday afternoon local time, Israel bombarded the Iranian capital with a new wave of strikes for a 3rd straight day. Iran said Israel struck its oil refineries, killed the intelligence chief of its paramilitary Revolutionary Guard and 2 other generals, and also hit population centers in intensive aerial attacks. According to human rights groups that monitor the country, the death toll is now at about 400 people with over 1,000 injured, although they have not distinguished between military officials and civilians. Israel's been trying to destroy Iran's rapidly advancing nuclear program and military leadership. In retaliation, Iran's fired over 270 missiles since Friday, 22 of which have slipped through Israel's air defenses, causing a lot of panic and chaos in the country's suburbs and population centers, killing 14 people and wounding nearly 400 others. Neither country appears ready to back down. In an interview with Fox News over the weekend, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told Brett Baier that Israeli intelligence had found that Iran had enough uranium to build 9 nuclear bombs. Netanyahu said his country was facing an imminent threat of nuclear destruction, and he was left with no choice but to act aggressively in the 12th hour.
It was absolutely clear that they were working in a secret plan to weaponize the uranium. They were marching very quickly. They would achieve a test device and possibly an initial device within months, and certainly less than a year. That was the intel we shared with the United States. I think we have excellent intel in Iran. I think we've proven that. And that is something that we couldn't possibly accept. Whether it would be 6 months or 12 months or 13 months is immaterial. Once they go that route, it's too late. And we will not have a second Holocaust.
The fighting started Friday in a surprise Israeli attack targeting Tehran's nuclear program and killing top military officials. And in an indication of how far Israel was seemingly prepared to go, a U.S. official told the AP that Israel had an opportunity and perhaps a plan to kill Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei, but President Trump nixed it. White House officials say President Trump is still trying to prevent further escalation of the war and resume talks with Iran on a nuclear deal. That 6th round of talks between the U.S. Mideast envoy Steve Witkoff and his Iranian counterparts, that was scheduled for Sunday, but Iran canceled. Israeli strikes initially focused on nuclear sites, air defenses, and military targets. But Israel said that if Iran didn't stop targeting Israel's civilian centers, that Israel would then target Iran's energy industry, which underpins much of its economy. And that's what we started to see happening over the weekend. Israel also bombed Yemen in an attempt to kill a senior military official for the Iranian-backed Houthi militia. The Houthis are one of Iran's strongest proxy forces in the region. According to the Israeli military, the airstrike targeted the Houthi military's chief of staff. But the big question now in terms of this war between Israel and Iran is whether or not the U.S. will get directly involved militarily in the war. Axios' Barak Ravid reports that Israel has asked the Trump administration over the past 48 hours to join the war and help Israel eliminate Iran's nuclear program. So Israel does not have the bunker buster bombs and large bomber aircraft needed to destroy Iran's Fordow uranium enrichment site. It is built deep underground into a mountain. The U.S. has both of those, the bunker buster bombs and the type of aircraft that would be needed to actually carry those bombs. But so far, the Trump administration has been distancing itself from Israel's operation. This weekend, though, President Trump telling ABC News, quote, "We are not involved in it. It's possible we could get involved, but we are not at this moment involved." Per Axios, directly attacking Iran, even if the U.S. involvement is limited to bombing a single site, would pull the U.S. directly into this war. However, if Fordow, that uranium enrichment site, is still operational after the war ends, analysts say that Israel will have failed in its goal to eliminate Iran's nuclear program. As I'm recording this podcast, there are some reports that explosions near Fordow have been heard, but that is not confirmed, and it is not at all clear what kind of damage that has done. The White House is still pushing for a diplomatic and peaceful solution to the conflict. One source telling Axios the fastest way for Iran to accomplish peace is to give up its nuclear weapons program. And one possible peace negotiator, Russian President Vladimir Putin, who himself is involved in a 3-year-long war with Ukraine. President Trump said that he had a long call with Putin this weekend, in part to discuss the conflict in the Middle East. The president told ABC News he would be open to Putin's idea to serve as a mediator between Iran and Israel. That said, CNN reports that Israeli and American officials are estimating that this conflict will take, quote, weeks, not days, before it is wrapped up. Okay, time for the speed read from the New York Times. The Trump administration announced over the weekend that Immigration and Customs Enforcement will temporarily pause raids at agricultural, hospitality, and restaurant workplaces, sectors heavily reliant on immigrant labor. Field agents have reportedly been instructed to halt all worksite enforcement operations at farms, meatpacking facilities, hotels, and restaurants. Enforcement will only continue for people suspected of serious crimes like human trafficking, drug smuggling, and money laundering. Agriculture and hospitality sectors have sounded the alarm about severe labor shortages and operational strain caused by the intensified raids. Nearly 42% of crop farm workers and roughly a third of travel sector employees are undocumented or immigrant workers. The decision suggests the scale of the president's mass deportation campaign is hurting industries and constituencies that he does not want to lose. The new guidance comes after protests in LA against the Trump administration's immigration raids, including at farms and businesses. And it also came as Trump made a rare concession last week that his crackdown was hurting American farmers and hospitality businesses.
Our farmers are being hurt badly by, they have very good workers. They've worked for them for 20 years. They're not citizens, but they've turned out to be, great.
The administration came into office saying it would initially target undocumented immigrants with criminal records, but it has in recent weeks expanded to raiding work sites and sweeping up other undocumented immigrants more broadly. Deputy White House Chief of Staff and the main architect of Trump's immigrant policies, Stephen Miller, has publicly pushed for a minimum of 3,000 arrests per day. That's up from about 650 a day during the first 5 months of Trump's second term. Arrests shot up to about 2,000 a day last week as ICE conducted operations at restaurants, factories, and businesses across the country. The United Farm Workers called this new move superficial, warning that undocumented employees remain at risk of future enforcement. And on Sunday, the president wrote on Truth Social that he wants ICE to expand deportations to America's largest cities like Chicago and New York. From the Associated Press, nearly 2,000 No King's Day events were held Saturday from coast to coast, with more than 5 million people participating, according to the event's organizers. The protests were designed to denounce what demonstrators view as President Trump's drift toward authoritarianism And to counter the military parade marking the Army's 250th anniversary, which coincided with President Trump's 79th birthday, the demonstrations remained peaceful in almost all of the cities, but tensions did escalate between police and protesters in LA as the day drew to a close. Huge, boisterous crowds marched in New York, Denver, Chicago, Houston, and LA, some behind No Kings banners. Atlanta's 5,000 capacity event quickly reached its limit, with thousands more gathering outside barriers to hear speakers in front of the state capitol. Someone was critically injured after a shooting, quote, possibly associated with a demonstration in downtown Salt Lake City, according to police. In Texas, the state capitol and capitol grounds were evacuated Saturday because of a, quote, credible threat against state lawmakers that were planning to attend the No Kings protest there. That's according to the Texas Department of Public Safety. An armed man who allegedly made threats against Republican officials was detained while he was en route to Austin. In Virginia, a 21-year-old man allegedly accelerated his SUV into a crowd of people at a No Kings Day rally, hitting at least one person. No Kings Day was promoted by Walmart heiress Christy Walton, herself a billionaire, in a full-page advertisement that she took out in the New York Times last Sunday. No Kings Day merchandise cropped up for sale on Amazon, Temu, and other online retailers leading up to the event. Organizers timed the protests to counter the Army's 250th anniversary celebration, which included a military parade in Washington, D.C. The event showcased more than 6,000 troops, 128 tanks, 50 aircraft, historical uniforms, horses from the 1st Cavalry, parachute teams, and drone demos. President Trump, who was celebrating his 79th birthday at the parade, was joined by First Lady Melania Trump, Vice President Vance, and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. He delivered an 8-minute speech lauding the Army as, quote, the greatest, fiercest, and bravest fighting force ever.
Because our soldiers never give up, never surrender, and never, ever quit. They fight, 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 and they win, win, win. Every other country celebrates their victories. It's about time America did too.
The parade was not interrupted by protesters, but hundreds of protesters did march toward the White House on Saturday, carrying signs with messages that asked, quote, where is the due process? And, quote, no to Trump's fascist military parade. That parade's been estimated to cost between $25 million and $45 million bucks. And an AP poll found that 60% of Americans questioned whether that money was well spent, with 78% remaining neutral on the parade itself. And finally, from ABC News, Pope Leo XIV, the Chicago native and the first American-born pope, made his first message to America Saturday in a video that was played exclusively for a crowd of 30,000 Catholics gathered at Rate Field, home of the Chicago White Sox. Much of Pope Leo's remarks were directed at young people. He acknowledged the difficulties that young people faced during and since the COVID-19 pandemic, which led to, quote, moments of anxiety, of loneliness for people suffering from depression or sadness. He encouraged people to embrace local parishes where they can, quote, discover the love of God is truly healing and it brings hope.
To, once again, the young people who are gathered here, I'd like to say that you are the promise of hope for so many of us. The world looks to you as you look around yourselves and says, we need you.
Pope Leo attended a Catholic grade school on the city's south side. He grew up in Dalton, a southwest suburb. He later earned his Master of Divinity degree from Catholic Theological Union in Chicago's Hyde Park neighborhood. After the conclave, video emerged showing the new pope had attended the 2005 World Series between the Chicago White Sox and the Houston Astros. The White Sox have since embraced all things Pontiff. T-shirts with the number 14 on the back for Pope Leo XIV were for sale on the ballpark grounds. The team unveiled a mural bearing his likeness. Last week, the team posted on X a photo of the Pope wearing a White Sox cap that was given to him. And White Sox senior vice president Brooks Boyer has even publicly invited the Pope to come throw out the ceremonial first pitch. All right, time for On This Day in History. On this day in 1884, the first roller coaster in America opens at Coney Island in Brooklyn. On this day in 1903, the Ford Motor Company was founded by Henry Ford and 11 associate investors. On this day in 1963, the first woman in space, Soviet cosmonaut Valentina Tereshkova, launched into orbit aboard the spacecraft, the Vostok 6, which completed 48 orbits in 71 hours. And on this day in 1965, Bob Dylan records Like a Rolling Stone. It would prove to be Dylan's magnum opus and arguably the greatest rock and roll record of all time. As Bruce Springsteen said of the first time he heard it, it sounded like somebody kicked open the door to your mind. All right, everyone, thank you for listening to the Mo News Podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this with your friends. It will help us grow. Follow us and subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and review us in the App Store. The reviews matter. Appreciate you sticking with me this week. I have a couple of guests lined up, and other than that, it'll be short and sweet. And if the last few days is any indication, there's going to be a lot of news. All right, everyone, have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Mo News Podcast. Have a fantastic day. I hope you enjoyed.